The crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber sparkled under the light of 3 different suns as 12 alien species gathered for what would become the most important meeting in their recorded history. The air buzzed with tension and a strange mix of gases that each species needed to breathe. Ambassador Kefter of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, his 4 arms moving in dramatic gestures as he addressed the assembly. Kefter was angry, and it showed in the way his skin changed from pale blue to deep purple. His voice echoed through the chamber as he spoke. Fellow council members, we can no longer ignore what the humans are doing. They have crossed every line we have drawn. They take resources from systems that belong to us. They build settlements on worlds we have claimed for centuries. They ignore every message we send them. The other ambassadors made sounds of agreement. Some clicked their claws on metal surfaces. Others released chemical scents that meant anger. In their cultures, the Vorthan delegate, a creature that looked like a giant slug with too many eyes, oozed forward on his platform. I am Gexmol of the Vorthan Trade Federation, the slug creature said in his wet, bubbling voice. My ships report the same thing. When our vessels approach human ships, the humans just wave at them and continue on their path. They act as if we do not exist. They do not ask for permission to enter our space. They do not pay the taxes we require. They simply do whatever they want. Commander Zix of the Kralian War Fleet slammed his clawed fist on the table. The sound rang through the chamber like a bell. Zix looked like a cross between a lizard and a bear, with scales that reflected light like metal. The humans have turned the entire Kepler 442 system into some kind of massive construction project. My scouts report thousands of structures floating in space. Mining platforms, factories, living stations, and things we cannot even identify. Our ships can barely fly through the system because of all the traffic. Other voices joined in with their complaints. The bird-like Altarians spoke of human settlements appearing on 3 of their sacred worlds. The Centaurian Collective reported human mining operations in asteroid fields they had been studying for decades. The crystalline beings from Rigel complained that human radio signals were interfering with their natural communications. Ambassador Kefter raised all 4 arms for silence. Each of these complaints proves the same point. The humans do not respect our authority. They do not follow the laws that have kept peace in this galaxy for 1,000 years. They expand wherever they want, take whatever they need, and ignore everyone else. The chamber fell quiet, except for the various breathing, clicking, and bubbling sounds of different alien physiologies. Council leader Thexara, an ancient being whose species had founded the council, spoke in a voice like wind. Through metal tubes, "What do you propose, Ambassador Kefter?" Kefter's skin darkened to an even deeper purple. War. We must declare war on the human species and force them to accept council authority. If we do not act now, they will spread across the entire galaxy like some kind of infection. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species argued for economic sanctions first. Others wanted to try one more diplomatic approach, but the evidence was clear. Humanity had grown from a single-world species to an interstellar civilization in less than 200 years. They had technology that rivaled or exceeded most council species, and they seemed completely uninterested in joining the galactic community. Commander Zix stood again. I have seen their military capabilities. Their ships are crude but effective. They use simple weapons, but they use them well. Most importantly, they have numbers. My intelligence reports suggest they have over 50,000 active spacecraft, and the ability to build more quickly than any species we have encountered. 50,000 ships? Gasped the Altarian representative. At minimum, Zix replied. They may have twice that number. The vote was taken using the ancient council methods. Each species placed a crystal into one of two urns. Blue crystals meant no to war. Red crystals meant yes to war. When the counting was finished, 12 red crystals sat in the war urn. The vote was unanimous. Ambassador Kefter prepared the formal declaration of war. It was written in 43 languages and transmitted on 17 different frequencies to ensure the humans would receive and understand it. The message was simple and direct. Humanity had violated council law and refused to accept council authority. They had 10 standard galactic days to withdraw from all contested systems and submit to council judgment. If they refused, the council would use military force to compel their compliance. The transmission was sent with the highest priority codes. It reached Earth's communication systems within hours. Meanwhile, on Earth, Jake Morrison was having the worst morning of his life. The coffee machine in the break room and NASA's Deep Space Communications Array had broken down again. This was the third time this month. Jake worked as a systems analyst, which meant he spent his days staring at computer screens full of data that most people would find incredibly boring. Jake was 34 years old, slightly overweight, and had the kind of face that people forgot 5 minutes after meeting him. He lived alone in a small apartment, drove a car that made strange noises, and his biggest excitement in recent months had been discovering a new sandwich shop near his office. The broken coffee machine was particularly annoying because Lisa Park, the new intern from the University of California, had started working in his department last week. Lisa was smart, funny, and had the kind of smile that made Jake forget what he was supposed to be doing. He had been working up the courage to ask her if she wanted to get coffee together, but now the coffee machine was broken again. Jake pushed the button on the machine several more times, hoping it would somehow start working. It did not. He kicked it gently, which also did not help. He was considering walking to the sandwich shop for coffee when his computer beeped with an incoming message notification. The message was automatically sorted by Earth's communication systems. These systems handled thousands of messages every day from various space agencies, research stations, and the occasional transmission from alien species that had made contact with humanity over the past 50 years. Most alien messages were routine communications about trade, scientific cooperation, or cultural exchanges. The Galactic Council's declaration of war was filed under routine alien correspondence in a digital folder that had not been opened by human eyes in over 6 months. The computer system tagged it as medium priority and scheduled it for review during the next quarterly alien communication assessment. Jake never saw the message. He was too busy trying to figure out how to fix the coffee machine and wondering if Lisa Park would think he was weird if he asked her to walk to the sandwich shop with him. As Jake finally gave up on the coffee machine and walked back to his desk, the most important message in human history sat unread in a computer folder, waiting for someone to notice it. The Galactic Council had declared war on humanity, and humanity's greatest concern was still whether the break room coffee would be ready in time for the afternoon shift change. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council declared war on humanity, and still no response had come from Earth. Ambassador Kefter paced back and forth in his private chambers aboard the Council flagship, his forearms moving in agitated patterns. The silence from the humans was more insulting than any angry reply could have been. "They mock us with their silence," Kefter said to his aide, a younger Zephyrian named Veltar. "They receive our declaration of war and respond with nothing. Not even an acknowledgement." Veltar checked his datapad for the 100th time that day. "Sir, our monitoring stations confirmed that Earth received the transmission. Their communication systems processed it normally, but there has been no official response from any human government or military organization." What made the situation worse was that humanity had not stopped their expansion activities. In fact, They seemed to be accelerating their operations. New human settlements appeared every week. Their mining operations in the asteroid belt had doubled in size. Most frustrating of all, human ships continued to fly through Council space as if nothing had changed. Admiral Kethvar, the ambassador's cousin and commander of the Zephyrian war fleet, had grown tired of waiting. He stood before the councils, military committee in full battle armor, his scarred face showing the experience of dozens of previous campaigns. "We have given the humans more than enough time to respond," Admiral Kethvar declared. "They have shown us complete disrespect. It is time to demonstrate the consequences of ignoring Council authority." The Admiral's plan was simple and direct. He would take 300 of the finest Zephyrian warships to the Sol system and force humanity to acknowledge Council power. The fleet would position itself at the edge of human space and demand immediate surrender. When faced with such overwhelming military might, even the stubborn humans would have to recognize their position. Commander Zix of the Krellians supported the plan. "My intelligence reports suggest that human military technology is primitive compared to ours. They still use projectile weapons and chemical propulsion. Our energy shields and plasma cannons will make short work of any resistance they offer." The Vorthan delegate Gexmal agreed from his slime-covered platform. "My trade analysis indicates that humans focus their resources on industrial production rather than military development. They are builders, not warriors. A show of force should be sufficient to bring them to negotiations." Admiral Kethvar spent 2 weeks preparing his fleet. Each ship was inspected and equipped with the latest weapons technology. The crews were briefed on human capabilities and warned not to underestimate their opponents, despite their primitive appearance. The Admiral had fought enough battles to know that overconfidence led to defeat. The Zephyrian war fleet was an impressive sight as it prepared to depart Council space. 300 sleek vessels arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and weapon ports. Each ship was crewed by experienced warriors who had never known defeat. The flagship Cosmic Dominion led the formation, its massive bulk bristling with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "Sir," reported the fleet's tactical officer as they prepared to jump to hyperspace, "our scouts are reporting unusual activity in the human asteroid belt. Significantly more traffic than normal." Admiral Kethvar studied the preliminary reports. Mining operations, most likely. These humans seem obsessed with resource extraction. It will not matter once we demonstrate our superior firepower. What the Admiral did not understand was that the mining operations were actually something much more significant. Human corporations had discovered that asteroids provided perfect locations for zero-gravity manufacturing. Over the past 5 years, every major asteroid in the belt had been converted into automated factories, research stations, or construction yards. Morrison-Chon Dynamics had turned Ceres into a massive shipyard that produced cargo vessels around the clock. Parker Industries had converted Vesta into a manufacturing center that specialized in advanced electronics. Belhong Stellar Industries had claimed Pallas and turned it into a research facility where they developed new technologies for space exploration. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison had finally solved his coffee machine problem by buying a small personal coffee maker for his desk. This had given him the confidence to ask Lisa Park if she wanted to have lunch with him in the NASA cafeteria. To his amazement, she had said yes. Jake spent the morning of their lunch date trying to decide what to wear. He had 3 nearly identical button-down shirts and 2 pairs of pants that were acceptable for work. After 15 minutes of careful consideration, he chose the blue shirt because Lisa had mentioned that blue was her favorite color. The lunch went better than Jake had dared to hope. Lisa turned out to be even more interesting than he had thought. She was working on her doctoral thesis about deep space communication protocols. She had grown up in San Francisco, loved science fiction movies, and made jokes that actually made Jake laugh out loud. "So what exactly do you do here?" Lisa asked as they shared a surprisingly decent piece of apple pie. "I monitor incoming communications from our deep space monitoring stations," Jake explained. "Most of it is pretty routine stuff. Scientific data, maintenance reports, the occasional message from alien species. Nothing too exciting." "Alien species?" Lisa looked interested. "That sounds exciting to me." Jake shrugged. "You would think so, but most of their messages are pretty boring. Trade requests, scientific collaboration proposals, cultural exchange programs. We get maybe 20 or 30 alien communications every month. They usually get filed for review by the diplomatic people." What Jake did not mention was that he had not actually checked the alien communications folder in several months. His job description said he should review it quarterly, but the messages were always so routine that he had started putting it off. Besides, if anything really important came in, surely someone else would notice it. Meanwhile, Captain Rick Hansen was having his own routine day, piloting the cargo vessel, Lucky Strike, through the asteroid belt. Rick was 42 years old, had been flying cargo ships for 15 years, and considered himself lucky to have a job that let him travel through space while listening to classic rock music. The Lucky Strike was officially classified as a cargo transport vessel, but Rick privately thought of it as the best job in the solar system. The ship was huge, comfortable, and equipped with every safety system that human engineering could devise. Since space was full of dangerous things like radiation, debris, and the occasional pirate, cargo ships were built to handle just about any emergency. Rick's current cargo hold was filled with supplies for the mining stations scattered throughout the belt. Toilet paper, coffee, replacement parts for machinery, and about 50,000 tons of refined metals for construction projects. It was routine work that paid well and gave Rick plenty of time to think about whether he should finally ask out. Susan, the cute dispatcher at Ceres Station, the Zephyrian war fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with weapons charged and shields raised. Admiral Kethfor expected to find a few primitive orbital platforms and perhaps some crude satellites. Instead, his sensors immediately began screaming warnings about massive energy signatures throughout the system. "Sir," his tactical officer reported in a shaking voice, "I am reading over 50,000 artificial structures in this system. Most of them appear to be mobile, and many are larger than our flagship." Admiral Kethfor stared at the tactical display in growing disbelief. The human solar system was not a simple planetary system with a few space stations. It was a vast industrial complex that stretched from the inner planets to beyond the orbit of Neptune. Thousands of ships moved between hundreds of space stations, mining platforms, and structures he could not even identify. "Sir," the communications officer added, "we are receiving a general broadcast from one of the human vessels. A cargo ship requesting identification and stating our current position is in a designated shipping lane." The Admiral looked at his display. The cargo ship that was hailing them was 3 times the size of his flagship. Captain Rick Hansen was enjoying his morning coffee and listening to an old song about flying when his proximity alarm started beeping. He turned down the music and looked at his scanner display, which showed about 300 unknown ships sitting right in the middle of shipping lane 7. "Well, that's weird," Rick said to his co-pilot Tony Russo, who was reading a magazine about fishing. "Tony, you ever see ships like these before?" Tony looked up from an article about the best fishing spots on Europa. "Nope, they got some kind. A fancy light show going on, though. Pretty colors." Rick studied the ships more carefully. They were smaller than most cargo vessels, but they had strange designs he had never seen before. Their hulls seemed to shimmer with some kind of energy field, and they had weapon-looking things pointed in all directions. Probably some new corporate security patrol, Rick decided. Maybe Belwang hired some exotic contractors. You know how these big companies like to show off. What Rick was looking at was the entire Zephyrian war fleet in full battle formation. Admiral Kethfer stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the massive human cargo ship that had just casually asked them to move out of a shipping lane. "Sir," the Admiral's tactical officer reported, "that vessel is reading as over 2 kilometers long. Our scans indicate it has armor plating thicker than our battlecruisers, and energy signatures that suggest extremely advanced power systems." Admiral Kethvar tried to process this information. According to Council intelligence, human ships were supposed to be primitive metal boxes with chemical rockets. The vessel approaching them looked like something that could fight his entire fleet. "What kind of weapons is it carrying?" the Admiral asked. "Sir, we are detecting at least 40 energy projection systems along its hull. They appear to be some kind of advanced particle beam weapons. There are also launch tubes for what might be missiles or kinetic projectiles." Rick Hansen activated his ship's standard safety systems as he approached the unknown vessels. Space was dangerous, and cargo ship captains learned to be prepared for anything from pirates to solar storms. The Lucky Strike's defensive systems came online automatically, scanning for threats and preparing to respond if necessary. "Hey there, unknown ships," Rick broadcast on the standard commercial frequency. "You are sitting in shipping lane 7. I got about 50 cargo haulers coming through here in the next hour, and we really need you to clear the lane before someone gets hurt." Admiral Kethver listened to the transmission with growing confusion. The human was speaking to his war fleet, as if they were some kind of traffic hazard. Either these humans were incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "I am detecting massive energy spikes from the human vessel. It appears to be charging some kind of weapon system." What the Zephyrians were detecting was Rick's routine activation of his ship's debris clearing system. Cargo ships used powerful lasers to vaporize small asteroids and space junk that might damage their hulls. Rick turned on the system without thinking about it, the same way he might turn on windshield wipers in the rain. "Open fire on that vessel," Admiral Kethver commanded. "Show these humans that we are not to be trifled with." The Zephyrian flagship's main plasma cannon, a weapon capable of destroying a city, fired directly at the Lucky Strike. The brilliant energy beam struck Rick's cargo containers, which happened to be loaded with refined titanium steel composite plates, destined for a space station construction project. Rick felt his ship shudder slightly and checked his damage control display. "Huh," he said to Tony. "Someone just hit us with what looks like a mining laser. Must be some kind of industrial accident." Tony looked up from his magazine again. "Anyone hurt?" "Nope. Didn't even scratch the cargo containers. But I better report it to station control in case someone's having equipment problems." Rick activated his general broadcast system. "Attention all vessels in Sector 7. We just got hit by what appears to be an accidental discharge from mining equipment. Everyone please check your safety systems and make sure you're industrial. Lasers are properly secured." Admiral Kethver stared at his weapons display in shock. His most powerful weapon had struck the human ship directly and caused no visible damage. The human pilot was now calmly discussing it as if someone had bumped into him in a parking lot. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "our sensors indicate that the human cargo containers are made of some kind of advanced composite material. The density readings are unlike anything in our databases." "What about their ship's hull?" "Sir, we cannot get clear readings on the hull. There appears to be some kind of interference. But based on the way it absorbed our plasma blast, it must be incredibly advanced." Rick decided to try a more direct approach to getting the unknown ships to move. He activated his work lights, which were designed to illuminate cargo operations in the darkness of space. To Rick, they were just powerful spotlights. To the Zephyrian fleet, they appeared to be some kind of advanced sensor jamming system that instantly blinded their targeting. Computers. Tony, Rick said, flip on the hazard beacons too. Maybe they'll realize they're in a shipping lane. The hazard beacons were designed to warn other vessels about cargo operations in progress. They broadcasted on multiple frequencies and included automated warnings about dangerous cargo and radiation hazards. The Zephyrian fleet's computers interpreted the signals as some kind of electronic warfare attack. Sir, the tactical officer reported in a panic, the human vessel has activated what appears to be a sophisticated jamming system. Our targeting computers are completely blind, and our communications are being disrupted. Admiral Kethfer realized. He was facing an enemy far more advanced than Council intelligence had suggested. The human cargo ship had shrugged off his most powerful weapon and responded with electronic countermeasures that crippled his fleet's systems. Across the asteroid belt, other human ships began responding to Rick's general broadcast about industrial accidents in Sector 7. Mining supervisor Betty Walsh was drinking her morning coffee aboard her ore processing ship, Big Bertha, when she heard Rick's message. Jerry, she called to her partner Jerry Colvin, who was in the engine room replacing. A worn bearing. Rick's having trouble with some kind of equipment malfunction in Sector 7. Want to go give him a hand? Jerry's voice came over the intercom. Sure thing, Betty. I was getting bored with this maintenance work anyway. Betty's ship was technically classified as an ore processor, but it was actually larger than most space stations. The ship was designed to grab asteroids, break them apart with industrial cutting beams, and process the raw materials into refined metals. Like all mining equipment in the asteroid belt, it was built to handle the most dangerous conditions humans could imagine. Construction foreman Danny Murphy received Rick's broadcast while he was overseeing the assembly of a new space habitat. His ship, Heavy Lifter, was designed to move massive construction components and was equipped with tractor beams, powerful enough to nudge asteroids into new orbits. Sam, Danny called to his supervisor Sam Carter, sounds like someone's having safety problems in Sector 7. We better go check it out before the insurance people get involved. Within 30 minutes, dozens of human industrial vessels were converging on Rick's position. Each ship was designed for specific tasks like mining, construction, or cargo transport. But all of them were built with the assumption that space was a dangerous place, where you needed to be prepared for anything. Admiral Kethfer watched his tactical display with growing horror as more and more human vessels appeared. Each new ship was larger than his flagship and appeared to be armed with industrial equipment that could easily serve as weapons. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving transmissions from multiple human vessels. They appear to be coordinating some kind of response to our presence. The Admiral listened to the human communications with fascination and terror. The humans were discussing his war fleet as if it were some kind of minor workplace hazard. They talked about clearing the shipping lane and preventing industrial accidents, with the casual tone of people discussing the weather. Sir, his aide whispered, perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. We may have underestimated human capabilities. Admiral Kethfer looked at his display showing hundreds of approaching human vessels, each one larger and more advanced than anything in his fleet. For the first time in his military career, he was completely outmatched, and the enemy did not even seem to realize they were in a battle. Retreat, he said quietly. Sir, full retreat. Get us out of here before they decide we are more than just a minor inconvenience. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in their 1,000-year history. Admiral Kethfer stood before the assembled representatives, his normally proud bearing broken by the humiliation of his defeat. His battle armor was still scorched from his encounter with what the humans called routine cargo operations. Explain to us again how 300 of our finest warships were defeated by a single human cargo vessel. demanded Council Leader Dexara, her metallic voice echoing through the chamber. Admiral Kethfer's skin had turned a pale, gray color that indicated deep shame among his species. Honored Council, I must report that our intelligence about human capabilities was completely wrong. Their cargo ship absorbed our most powerful plasma blast without any visible damage. When we tried to target it, they activated jamming systems that blinded our entire fleet. Ambassador Kethter stepped forward, his forearms gesturing frantically. You said their weapons were primitive projectiles and chemical rockets. How is this possible? Sir, their cargo ship was over 2 kilometers long and appeared to be made of materials we have never encountered. The weapons we detected were unlike anything in our databases. Most disturbing of all, when reinforcements arrived, we counted over 200 additional vessels, each one larger than our flagship. Commander Zix of the Krallians slammed his clawed fist on his table. This makes no sense. Our scouts have been watching human space for decades. They should not have this level of technology. The Vorthan delegate Gexmol oozed forward on his platform. My trade analysts have been studying human economic patterns. According to our calculations, they should not be able to support a military force of this size. Their industrial output, while impressive, should be focused on expansion and colonization, not weapons development. What the Galactic Council did not understand was that humanity's expansion was their military strength. Every human settlement was built with the assumption that space was trying to kill them. Every ship was designed to handle radiation storms, asteroid impacts, equipment failures, and hostile environments. What the Council saw as weapons were actually just tools humans used to survive in space. The debate continued for hours as each species tried to understand how they had so badly misjudged human capabilities. The Altarians reported that human settlements had appeared on 17 more worlds in the past month. The Centaurian Collective provided data showing human mining operations in systems previously thought to be uninhabitable. We need more information, declared Dexara. Send scouts to every human system. I want detailed reports on their actual capabilities, not the guesswork we have been relying on. Over the next 6 months, Council scouts began systematic observation of human space. What they discovered challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization and technology. Human space was not organized like any other species the Council had encountered. Most galactic civilizations followed predictable patterns. They developed faster than light travel, established colonies on habitable worlds, built military fleets to protect their territory, and eventually joined the galactic community. Humans had done none of these things in the expected way. Instead of focusing on habitable planets, humans seemed to prefer building habitats in space. Instead of establishing traditional colonies, they created mobile industrial platforms that could be moved as needed. Instead of building military ships, they created vessels that served multiple purposes and could be converted for different uses. The scout reports painted a picture of a civilization that was growing faster than any mathematical model suggested was possible. Human industrial output was increasing exponentially. Their population was spreading across hundreds of systems. Most importantly, their technology was advancing at a rate that suggested they would soon surpass even the most advanced Council species. On Kepler 442b, construction foreman Danny Murphy was dealing with his own crisis. The atmospheric processing equipment had malfunctioned again. The construction schedule was 3 weeks behind, and corporate headquarters was asking annoying questions about budget overruns. Sam, Danny called to his site supervisor, Sam Carter. Did you see this message from the Home Office? They want to know why we are spending so much money on defensive systems for a simple terraforming project. Sam, who was currently wearing a full environmental suit because the planet's atmosphere would kill an unprotected human in about 30 seconds, shrugged inside his suit. Tell them it's because we are terraforming a planet, Danny. This stuff is expensive because it's complicated and dangerous. Neither man realized that their routine terraforming project was taking place on a world that 3 different council species considered a sacred site worth going to war over. The humans had filed the proper paperwork with Earth's colonial office and received approval to begin atmospheric modification. The fact that alien species might object to the project had never occurred to anyone involved. The Council scouts watching the Kepler 442 project reported that the humans were using technology that seemed almost impossible. They were changing the planet's atmosphere with machines that created their own weather patterns. They were building cities that floated in the air while the surface was still being modified. Most impressive of all, they were doing all of this while treating it as routine industrial work. Council Leader Thexara called for another emergency session after reviewing the scout reports. Fellow council members, we face a situation unlike any in our recorded history. The humans are not just expanding randomly. They are systematically converting entire star systems into industrial complexes. The evidence was overwhelming. In the Alpha Centauri system, humans had built what appeared to be the largest manufacturing facility in the galaxy. In the Wolf 359 system, they had created a research complex that was advancing their technology at an incredible pace. In dozens of other systems, they were extracting resources and building infrastructure on a scale that dwarfed anything the Council had seen. They have to be lying about their intentions, insisted Commander Zix. No species develops this kind of capability without planning to use it for conquest. But the scout reports suggested something different. The humans were not building a military empire. They were building an economic one. Their expansion was driven by the need for resources to support their growing population and their desire to build bigger and better versions of everything they had already built. The most disturbing reports came from scouts who had managed to intercept human communications. The humans talked about their expansion projects with casual confidence that suggested they expected to continue growing indefinitely. They discussed converting entire solar systems into habitable space as if it were a normal weekend project. Ambassador Kethter studied a holographic display showing human expansion over the past 5 years. Red dots marked new settlements. Blue lines showed shipping routes. Green areas indicated active construction projects. The display looked like a disease spreading across the galaxy. Look at this pattern, Kefter said to the assembled council. They are not expanding randomly. They are creating a network. Each new settlement supports the others. Each new project makes the next one easier. In 10 years, they will control more space than the entire council combined. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Galactic Council had spent 1,000 years maintaining careful balance between member species. They had prevented wars through diplomacy and controlled expansion through regulation. But humanity was growing so fast that traditional methods of control might not work. What do you propose? Asked Nexara. Kefter's skin darkened to deep purple as he prepared to speak. We assemble the largest military force in galactic history. Every council species contributes their finest ships and most experienced commanders. We strike at multiple human systems simultaneously and force them to negotiate before they become too powerful to stop. The debate that followed lasted for days. Some species argued for continued diplomacy. Others suggested economic pressure. But the scout reports made clear that humanity was approaching a point where they would be too strong for the council to influence. The final vote was unanimous. The council would assemble a fleet of 10,000 ships from 12 different species. They would coordinate the largest military operation in galactic history, and they would force humanity to accept council authority before it was too late. Meanwhile, on Earth, Jake Morrison was facing his own crisis. Lisa Park's parents were coming to visit next week, and she had mentioned that her father was very protective of his daughter. Jake was pretty sure that meeting potential future in-laws was more terrifying than anything space could possibly throw at him. The largest military fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of human space, like a metal storm cloud waiting to unleash lightning. 10,000 ships from 12 different species formed a battle formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. Fleet Admiral Mortek of the Celestians commanded the massive force from his flagship Eternal Glory, a vessel so large it had its own gravitational field. "All fleet commanders report ready for battle," announced the admirals. Communications Officer: "We have achieved complete surprise. Human sensors show no awareness of our presence." Admiral Mortek studied the tactical displays showing human space spread out before them. According to the latest intelligence reports, humanity had over 100,000 ships scattered across their territory. But the Council fleet had the advantage of coordination and superior firepower, or so they hoped. "Begin the attack," Admiral Mortek commanded. "All task forces proceed to assigned targets. Remember, we want to force surrender, not complete destruction. Show them our power, but leave them able to negotiate." The Council fleet split into 12 separate attack groups, each one targeting a different human system. The plan was to strike simultaneously and overwhelm human defenses before they could organize a response. Within hours, the war that had been brewing for over a year would finally begin in earnest. The first attack group jumped into the Alpha Centauri system, expecting to find a lightly defended human outpost. Instead, they emerged into what looked like the middle of an interstellar trade convention. Commander Vel Tak of the Zephyrian Task Force stared at his sensors in disbelief. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "I am reading approximately 100,000 human vessels in this system. Most appear to be civilian ships, but they are larger than our battle cruisers." What the Council fleet had stumbled into was the quarterly Alpha Centauri Trade Summit, where human corporations from across known space gathered to conduct business. The civilian vessels were corporate transports, mobile factories, research ships, and the private yachts of executives who had more money than some entire planets. Margaret Bell, CEO of Bell Wong Stellar Industries, was in the middle of negotiations with 3 other corporations when unknown ships appeared on her sensors. Margaret had built her company from a small mining operation into one of the largest industrial concerns in human space. She was not easily impressed by unexpected visitors. "Linda," she called to her assistant Linda Wright, "are we expecting any non-human delegations at the summit this quarter?" Linda checked her scheduling system. "Not according to our records, Miss Bell. Should I send them a standard trade inquiry package?" Margaret looked at the sensor display, showing thousands of unknown vessels in aggressive formations. "Better make it the full corporate introduction package. If they want to do business, they need to understand what they are dealing with." The corporate introduction package was a comprehensive data file that human companies used when establishing new trade relationships. It included detailed information about humanity's industrial capabilities, economic output, and technological achievements. When the Council fleet's computers finished translating and analyzing the data, their commanders realized they were facing an economic powerhouse that had somehow developed without anyone in the galactic community noticing. According to the human data, their civilization produced more manufactured goods in a single year than most Council species produced in a decade. Their shipping fleet was larger than the combined military forces of half the Council members. Their research and development programs were advancing technology at a rate that seemed almost impossible. "Sir," Commander Veltak's communications officer reported, "the humans are requesting a meeting to discuss potential trade opportunities and mutual defense agreements." Commander Veltak stared at the message. The humans thought his attack fleet was a trade delegation. They were offering to sell him things and suggesting they work together for mutual protection. Either these humans were incredibly brave, or they had military capabilities that made his task force irrelevant. Similar scenes played out across human space as Council attack groups encountered industrial operations, construction projects, and civilian traffic that dwarfed anything they had expected. The humans responded to each attack group with polite requests for identification and offers to establish diplomatic relations. The peace negotiations that followed were held on a space station that humanity built specifically for the occasion. In the 3 weeks between the Council fleet's arrival and the actual talks, human construction crews had assembled a diplomatic facility, complete with accommodations for 12 different alien physiologies, restaurants serving food from 47 different worlds, and gift shops selling souvenirs. Ambassador Kefter found himself sitting across a conference table from the human delegation, led by a woman named Carol Stevens, who introduced herself as Director of External Relations for the Sol System Cooperative Council. Carol was 53 years old, had gray hair, and the kind of calm confidence that came from years of managing complicated business deals. "We have to admit," Carol said, pouring coffee from a pot that probably cost more than most planets' entire diplomatic budgets, "we were a little confused by your approach. Usually when people want to establish trade relations, they send a nice message first instead of showing up with 10,000 warships." Ambassador Kefter felt his skin flush purple with embarrassment. "Trade relations? We came here to force your surrender. We declared war on your species 18 months ago." Carol paused with her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "You did? When?" "Exactly 18 months ago. We sent formal declarations on 17 different frequencies in 43 languages." Carol turned to her aide, a young man named Peter Walsh, who was frantically checking his tablet computer. "Peter, did we ever receive any declarations of war?" Peter's fingers flew over his screen as he searched through databases. "Well, there are about 14,000 unread messages in the routine alien correspondence folder. I can check if you want, but it might take a while. Probably a good idea." The next few hours were deeply embarrassing for the Galactic Council. It turned out that humanity had received every single communication the Council had sent, but their automated filing systems had sorted the messages into various categories, like probable spam, trade inquiry follow-up later, and possible cultural exchange program. The declaration of war had been filed under routine diplomatic correspondence and scheduled for review during the next quarterly assessment of alien relations. Since humanity received dozens of alien communications every month, most of them about trade or scientific cooperation, the war declaration had simply gotten lost in the shuffle. "So let me understand this correctly," said Fleet Admiral Mortek, who had been invited to the negotiations as a representative of the Council's military forces. "You have been ignoring our authority, expanding into contested space and building what appears to be the largest industrial civilization in the galaxy, and you did not even know we had declared war on you." Carol nodded cheerfully. "That's about right, though I would not call it an industrial civilization exactly. We just needed stuff, so we built the stuff. Then we needed more stuff to support the stuff we had built, so we built more stuff. It kind of snowballed from there." "But your military capabilities—" "Oh, those are not military systems," interrupted Captain Rick Hansen, who had been invited to represent the civilian shipping fleet. "That's just standard safety equipment. Space is dangerous, you know. Solar storms, asteroids, equipment failures, pirates, the occasional black hole. You cannot fly around in a tin can and hope for the best." The revelation that humanity's impressive defensive systems were actually just routine safety equipment, designed for the normal hazards of space travel, was the final shock for many Council members. These humans had accidentally built a civilization capable of defending itself against the largest military force in galactic history. And they had done it because they were worried about space weather and minor technical problems. The negotiations concluded with what historians would later call the Treaty of Mutual Understanding. Humanity agreed to pay more attention to their alien correspondence and to clearly mark their expansion activities so other species would know what they were doing. The Galactic Council agreed to use more obvious subject lines in their communications and to recognize humanity's right to continue their industrial expansion. Both sides also agreed to establish regular diplomatic contacts and to work together on common problems like piracy, natural disasters, and the occasional rogue asteroid. The council members were quietly relieved to discover that humanity was more interested in building things than conquering territory. 6 months later, Jake Morrison was getting married to Lisa Park in a ceremony held aboard one of humanity's newest space habitats. The wedding was attended by representatives from all 12 council species, who had discovered that human celebrations were much more enjoyable than formal diplomatic functions. As Jake and Lisa exchanged vows with Earth visible through the viewport. Behind them, neither of them realized that their wedding was being broadcast across the galaxy as part of a new cultural exchange program.